Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Prime Minister Narendra Modi last week launched the platform for transparent taxation, honoring the honest, aimed at easing compliance and expediting refunds, benefiting honest taxpayers. Three main features of the platform are faceless assessment, faceless appeal, and taxpayers charter. The Prime Minister said focus is on making the tax system people-centric and public-friendly, banking the unbanked, securing the unsecured, funding the unfunded, and honoring the honest. According to the Prime Minister, the four factors responsible for changes in the taxation system were policy-driven governance, belief in people's honesty, the use of advanced technology, and efficiency in bureaucracy. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the Transparent Taxation platform. Joining me on the program today are Jayant Dasgupta, former Secretary, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister of India, Deepshika Sikarwar, Senior Editor of the Economic Times, and Sunil Garg, Tax Expert. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. So Dasgupta, I'd like to begin the program with you first. Let's first try and understand what this platform is all about and what is it that we would like to achieve from this new transparent platform.
The three things which are very important about this platform are that first, the assessment will be done by some income tax officer or assessing officer somewhere in India. It will not be the person who has been designated to deal with a certain number of cases within his jurisdiction. So there would be a kind of a faceless entity which would be assessing. There are issues which taxpayers have been raising about messy dealings with income tax officers, and if they don't get along well on a personal level with an assessing officer, sometimes it leads to trouble. So I think this has been designed to mitigate that effect and to have a faceless interaction. As it is for most taxpayers, the returns are to be filed online in any case. So this is a step forward in that direction, and to make it completely faceless as far as assessments are concerned. In the case of appeals, there were 4.78 lakh appeals pending as of March 2019, and the number is steadily rising. Appeals, one of the things which has been pointed out again by taxpayers is that some of them feel diffident and afraid to file appeals in the same jurisdiction because they feel that there could be retaliatory action. Now, again, this platform envisages, which is going to come into effect from the 25th of September 2020, that the appeal would be assigned to someone, an appellate authority somewhere in India, based on perhaps a random selection. And then it would also be reviewed. It would not be the decision of an individual, but it would probably be a collective decision of 2 or 3 people. So that again would lend anonymity and facelessness. And again, there is not going to be any personal appearance of an appealee because things would be online. And apart from some exceptions like very serious tax evasion cases, very large tax amounts, etc., this procedure would be followed. The final thing is about the tax charter. Now, it lays down, and it has already come into effect from the 13th of April, it lays down the rights and responsibilities of various players in the whole tax assessment, appeal, and payment system. So, the duties and responsibilities of the tax authorities have also been very clearly delineated. So they will have to stick to a time-bound schedule, and there are do's and don'ts which have to be followed by each of the players. So it is all in the right direction, and there would be a large overlap or overhang of technology, because artificial intelligence and data analytics would be used. So it is going to speed up the whole process of assessment and perhaps appeals also if we develop this software very quickly.
Right. Okay. Points taken. Let me take the points that you're making forward now with Sunil Garg. Sunil Garg, as far as the taxpayer is concerned, what does all of this mean for the taxpayer?
While launching this platform, the Honorable Prime Minister has said the new system will be seamless, faceless, and painless. Of course, the first two things are going to happen. It will be seamless and it will be faceless. But whether it will be painful or painless, it is still to be seen. What happens at the moment, Prem? There is a procedure of the assessment, and the judicial officer does the assessment, and they make the assessment, and sometimes high pitch assessments are also made just to get the demand, just to get their targets fulfilled. They raise high pitch assessment, and the department has also formed a committee to see these high pitch assessment that leads to tax harassment. Because what is the present system? Once a tax demand has been raised by any assessing officer, you have to deposit 20% of that amount before going to the appeal. Otherwise, you cannot get the stay of demand. And what is the status of these high pitch assessment? I give you data from the Economic Survey of India. You know, the income tax department is the biggest litigant, as Jayant Dasgupta ji has also pointed out. More than around 5 lakhs cases are pending. And you see the success rate. Success rate is less than 30% of the appeals filed by the department. It means what the assessing officer are assessing, and they are levying the penalties. And in case of penalties, you will see a surprising data. In case of penalties levied, the success rate is less than 6%. Only 6% of the penalties levied by the assessing officers has been confirmed by the Honorable ITAT or High Courts. So this is the state of affairs. No doubt it is a very good system. It is a next generation assessment procedure. It's a faceless, going to be seamless, going to be. But what I want, there has to be an accountability to be casted upon the income tax officer. Once they are doing wrong, there has to be a deterrent. Because what happens? If any income tax office, if any assessee does any wrong, he has to pay the tax, he has to pay the interest, he has to pay the penalty and the prosecution also. But the reverse is not true. Any taxation system in the world, it should be a two-way system. And our income tax system, because it was more blatant, it was more power-centric, it is a one-way system yet. And I think the Honorable Prime Minister or the Honorable Finance Minister has to see this aspect also. How? Because this high-pitch assessment, that leads to harassment and that leads to tax terrorism also. If we want honest taxpayers, then we also want an honest assessing officer, honest field officer. And I want to suggest to the government of India at this stage that they should have a standard operating procedure, how the assessment will be done. And one more thing can be done. They have proposed it, but whether it will be implemented, the draft is still out to come. Like in the transfer pricing, we have a DRP system, dispute resolution mechanism. What I am suggesting, before finalizing an order, there has to be a draft order. They have suggested, but it should also be under a standard operating procedure. Otherwise, all this exercise will go into the vain.
Okay, Deepshika Sikarwar. So let's talk about another aspect now. Will all of this ensure that more people come under the tax net, and the tax net itself is widened because there is more faith really as far as the taxpayer is concerned in the system itself?
Frank, this itself may not bring in a lot of taxpayers into the tax net, but as you know, Mr. Garg also mentioned now, we are moving towards a very digital data-based system. So income tax is not just capturing a lot of data in your income tax returns, but also they're getting data from third parties. So, and it is the third party information system is being expanded further. So, you know, your education fees, a lot of people give that in cash, your hotel bills, your eating outs. If you look at the number of taxpayers and if you look at the number of people who travel abroad, and if you actually do a back on the envelope calculation, you will see the number of taxpayers is very, very small, and probably more people need to pay tax, which Prime Minister also alluded to in his speech. So this capturing of data will allow income tax to sort of actually see how many people are, you know, paying their taxes genuinely and how many people are not paying taxes genuinely, and widen the tax net sort of going forward. now since there is all this is happening through a digital system, and all interface is digital. So like after demonetization, there was a spurt in number of tax filers. uh, all the messages, people were asked to file tax returns, and all the interface was done through emails over Income Tax India portal, and which is how it is going to work in the new system as well.
Okay. All right. So points taken. Let me go back to a point that you were making earlier, Mr. Dasgupta, about the Taxpayers Charter. Now, what does it entail, and what are the rights of an honest taxpayer?
I think the first responsibility of the taxpayer is to disclose all his sources of income and the expenses also, because the expenses may be the income of somebody else, and that could get captured and help in enlarging the tax base. So it is the duty of every honest taxpayer to help the government in its effort to bring in more people who are in the tax bracket but who may not be filing their returns and paying tax. So one of the things which the government is trying in parallel to do is to link up the bank accounts, and the bank accounts have been linked up now with both the Aadhaar cards as well as the income tax PAN card number. So it helps if we develop this software well enough, we would be able to capture all the transactions that are taking place through financial intermediaries. What it will not be able to capture would be the cash transaction. And that is something which the government is bothered about. And the effort at demonetization was basically aimed at stopping this practice and bringing things upfront and above board, and then try to sort out the tax collection mechanism. So now this is only an effort which was made, but efforts have to continue in this direction, because it is true that apart from salaried taxpayers, of which there are very large numbers, though in percentage terms they are small as compared to the population, a large number of business people are either not showing their proper income or not within the tax bracket at all. And that is important to be captured in order to enlarge the tax base and to make it easier for everyone to comply and to contribute to the national effort, because taxes, after all, pay for the government's social welfare programs, the government's other activities as well.
All right. So, Sunil Garg, let's first also understand another aspect now. What is the difference between e-assessment and faceless assessment?
No, both are one and the same thing. In e-assessment, you have to file the documents online, your replies. But the judicial officer, you know the judicial officer, and he can call you whenever he wants. In case of faceless assessment, now it's judicial free. You are sitting in Delhi, your assessing officer may be allotted of Guwahati or be Bombay, or even you can file the appeals anywhere. And seamless means what? Seamless means that now all the jurisdiction has been done away with. There is no particular jurisdiction assigned to any particular person. This is seamless and faceless, and this is the difference between the e-assessment and the faceless assessment. And now I want to add one more thing. As Mr. Jayant Dasgupta ji has said, the main problem lies as far as the tax collections are concerned. When Modi government came into the power, the tax collection was around 6.5 lakh crore. In 18-19 financial year, it was 11.5 lakh crore, almost an increase of 18% every year. But we have to simplify the law also. But the Direct Tax Code Committee has suggested that that has to be implemented now.
Okay. All right. So that point is taken. Now, before I go to Deepshika, let me get in another aspect as well. Since we are talking about faceless and since we are talking about faceless assessment, let's also talk about the faceless appeal facility and how it will work. Sunil Garg.
Me?
Yes.
Now the same thing has happened with the CIT appeal, and which is the first appellate authority. What happens in our income tax system, Frank? Once your assessment is being done by an assessing officer, then you go to the CIT appeal, and that is the first appellate authority. Then you go to the ITAT. But there is a problem with the CIT appeal also. There is a circular from the CBDT that to getting the better performance, CIT appeal has to make the quality orders. And quality orders means what? What the assessing officer has done, you have to either confirm that order or to enhance the demand. Now, what you have again spoiled the institution of CIT appeal, which was the first appellate authority. Now, with this introduction of the faceless appeal also, I think the system will be getting better and we will get better justice system in place in the time to come. This is my opinion.
All right, Deepshika Sikarwar, widening the scope of the discussion now. What are some of the major direct tax reforms that have been undertaken in the recent past to improve the entire system itself?
Frank, while there have been a number of steps that have been taken, but this is faceless assessment and faceless appeal. This is a transformational change. This is a huge structural change in the way the whole tax department works. And if you see, Prime Minister also sort of mentioned this, ending the Jaan Pehchan culture, so to say, So now you don't know where your jurisdictional officer is. He is neutral to whoever he is assessing. Everything is digital. Everything is monitored digitally. It's online. In the past, if you see, government has sort of reduced the corporate tax rate. So it is signaling a directional change. In terms of personal income tax, also rates have been reduced if you do not wish to take, some of the exemptions that are available. So the move is towards exemption-free, a very clean administration. Mr. Garg said, you need to simplify the law. Now, why is the law cumbersome? Because it is laden with these, exemptions. Various provisions have been inserted over time, so on and so forth. So the idea is to move to performance-linked exemptions and clean up the whole income tax law. A number of reforms have been introduced already, and the direct tax code task force report is available with the government. So hopefully going forward, probably those recommendations would be taken on.
All right, Mr. Dasgupta, how has the use of technology helped in streamlining the entire process? You spoke about, linking of Aadhaar and the bank account and PAN card and so on and so forth. But as far as digitization is concerned and the use of technology is concerned, what has taken place?
The first thing is that once it is carried to its logical conclusion, the expenditure which is made through bank accounts will be traceable and will immediately get registered on some platform. So the Income Tax Department has already taken the initiative in this matter of populating partly the income tax returns. So when you are filling in the return nowadays, many of the entries are already there, which have been collected by way of, let's say, tax deduction at source and other things. So this is something which is going to move forward, and with the advance in technology, I'm sure in just a few years' time, the people who operate through their bank accounts and through, let's say, credit card facilities, they will not have much difficulty in filing their tax return, even without the help of professionals. So this will be a great benefit to people, like middle-class taxpayers who have only one or two other sources of income other than their salary. And as far as businesses are concerned also, if it is done through the financial institution channel, it will become easier because everything will get registered. The problem, as I mentioned, is basically about the cash transaction. Now, one of the things which the government has also been trying to do is to resolve most of the disputes which involve very large amounts. And one of the announcements which has been made was this Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, which has been passed in the budget in 2020. And the date has been extended to December, so that people who are willing to come forward and have a dispute resolution come through, they will not have to pay the penalty and interest if they do so by the 31st of December. So this is also a very positive step, and it is expected to yield some 9.5 lakh crores or so of additional tax revenue, which is locked up in disputes. The last point I wanted to make is that the basic theory is that if more people comply with the tax laws and pay their taxes, the burden on everybody will come down proportionately. And that is the direction in which the government is moving. The first step in this direction was to reduce the taxes on the corporate sector. And the second was to raise the ceiling levels for various individual taxpayers, or the floor level rather, for individual taxpayers. So the more and more people come in and become tax compliant, the less would be the tax burden, and everybody can then share in the tax effort.
Right. So Sunil Garg, let's look at the other side as well. Will this ensure better efficiency on the part of the income tax department too?
Of course, it is going to be a change, such a change which will entirely change the face of the department as well as the tax collecting agency, as for the department as well as to the assessee. As Deepshika ji has also said, this is the most advanced system prevailing in some of the countries in the world. But as I said earlier also, we have to work both ways. And as Jayant Dasgupta ji has pointed out, sir, we have to frame a system to resolve the disputes. 9 lakhs crore of the amount has been stuck up in the disputes as on 31st March 2019. Vivad se Vishwas is one scheme, but another may be, and what I should suggest, there are so many issues where the different high courts has given different interpretational issues. One high court says that this is allowable, other says this is not allowable. A lot of disputes are there, and what I suggest, the government should clarify these issues. If High Court has given a opinion, if given a decision, then they should end the matter. Otherwise, the dispute will increase.
Okay, Deepshika Sikarwar, taking the points of Sunil Garg forward. Now, what more needs to be done really as far as dispute resolution and generally better taxation is concerned going forward, do you think?
See, Frank, if you look at Mr. Garg, what he mentioned earlier was, this issue about high-pitched assessment. Now, these have been a huge issue in the department, wherein income tax overzealous income tax officers have made high-pitched assessments. Now, what this faceless assessment and faceless appeal is going to do is, because everything is online, and an assessment order is going to be reviewed by, say, sectoral experts and a higher, a committee of higher officials. So there would be some bit of consciousness on part of officials when they pass orders. So going forward, there would be, I think, these high-pitched assessment orders would obviously come down. Apart from that, government is also looking at, they've raised the threshold of filing appeals at various appellate bodies. So the idea is to sort of bring down litigation, the image of the department as, the highest, the most active litigant. That should sort of come down. The Vivad se Vishwas scheme is also one step in that direction. The idea is to sort of bring down litigation going forward, litigate only when there is a substantive issue. And there have been clarifications which have been provided, wherever there are interpretational issues because of, varied judgments from various appellate bodies. So the whole effort is to have, a litigation-free tax system, a transparent tax system, wherein taxpayers can, it is easy for taxpayers to sort of come forward, pay their taxes honestly without, much effort.
Sure. All right. Time to get quick closing comments from my panelists now with the best way forward, starting first with you, Mr. Dasgupta.
I think one of the most important things is to do away with the exemptions and have a clean-cut law, like, the US law, for instance, where there are very few exceptions. The law is a thin volume, and there are rulings and precedents which are quoted in any proceeding of appeal. So that is the way to go because it makes things very simple. The second thing is to have a very robust and very efficient artificial intelligence system in place, which will have all the banks together, the accounts of all the individuals, and then there will be so that the assessment is done on more or less a mechanical basis. The last thing I wanted to say, and I support Mr. Garg and Ms. Sikarwar on this, there is this largely unknown by the public, a matter of fixing targets for assessing officers. And sometimes they are very high when the collections are low. And that leads to a plethora of appeals and litigation in its way. So that has to be dispensed with. And I think this faceless system where the assessing officer and the appellate authorities are under no pressure to meet a target, this would help in a very big way in getting rid of this measure, which leads to unnecessary litigation.
Right. Sunil Garg.
First of all, our Income Tax Act is 59 years old. It should retire, first of all. Next is 60 years. We have to place a modern legislature. Number two, all the draconian provision of the income tax should be reviewed. Number third and most important, as Jayant Dasgupta ji has said, sir, we are getting so much information. Department has so many information from various sources. They have information, but to make them those information, we need big data analysis to make those information as a conclusive evidence. Because if you have a conclusive evidence against the assessee, you can go ahead, you can tax them. But what we are trying to do at the moment, the assessing officer, they have information, they just pass the information, ask for the clarification and make the assessment. No, make these information into a conclusive report, a conclusion-based investigation should be done. That will lead to tax base, more people coming to the tax rate, and also increasing the tax collection of the government of India.
And Deepshika Sikarwar, close the show for us with your quick concluding remark.
Faceless assessment is a huge step forward. It will sort of transform the way tax department really works. It brings in huge transparency because it's a jurisdiction-free assessment. You don't know, you would not know who your assessing officer is. So it's a huge transformative change for the income tax department. And going forward, if you look at the kind of changes that the government is looking at, cleaning up the corporate taxes exemptions, personal tax exemption, directionally this is going towards a very clean, neat tax administration, which will, with fewer tax rate, lower tax rate, that will sort of ensure higher compliance from taxpayers.
One point, the department should train their field officer first of all. They should have a standard operating procedure also. This is my submission to the government of India.
Okay, all right. On that note, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is several tax reforms have taken place in the recent past. The Transparent Taxation platform is another step in that direction. Efforts are being made to widen the tax net and ensure that no one gets away scot-free. The government is undertaking digitization on a large scale so that there is almost total tax adherence. What needs to be done going forward is that we need a better mechanism to resolve disputes, and litigation should be limited to only major concerns or major problems. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.